Hi, I'm Salman Rushdie, and you're watching Brut. You know, we are the only creature on the earth that tells stories. You know? There's nothing else, no matter how intelligent the creatures may be, and there are very intelligent creatures on earth, whales, you know. But nothing else on earth tells stories. You know, we are the storytelling animal. You know, we tell each other stories to understand the kind of animal that we are. Nobody else does that.
Je suis chez moi avec le romancier Salman Rushdie qui vient de publier en France un livre qui s'appelle Le Couteau. C'est un livre qui revient sur la tentative de meurtre dont il a été victime le 12 août 2022, 30 ans après la fatwa prononcée contre lui par l'ayatollah Khomeini à l'occasion de la publication de son roman Les versets sataniques en 1988. Alors dans ce livre qui s'appelle Le Couteau, il raconte son agression mais aussi sa convalescence, l'œil droit qu'il a perdu, ses combats pour la liberté et puis tout ce qu'il a sauvé aussi, à savoir l'amour et l'imagination. Hello, Salman Rushdie.
Hello.
So you know that Brut's audience is quite young, and I was wondering, how would you introduce yourself to a person, say a young person, that has never heard of you?
Oh, what would I say? I've done quite a lot of things, you know. I mean, I've written some books, 22 of them, and I even have written a song for you too.
Which one?
The Ground Beneath Her Feet. I wrote a book called The Ground Beneath Her Feet, which is about a pop star who writes songs. So in the book, there are imaginary pop songs. And one of them is called The Ground Beneath Her Feet. And I sent it, because I'm friendly with Bono of U2. And I sent it to him I said, read the book in case I've made stupid mistakes about the music industry, that I could fix them. And he found this song and he wrote a melody. So then they recorded it. So I have a U2 song.
Is that all, to introduce yourself?
I think that'll do.
As a matter of fact, who am I is a question that you pose in your latest book, Knife. So I guess you could answer this question. Who are you?
Well, the thing is, it depends who you ask. If you ask some people, I'm a pretty good writer. If you ask other people, I'm a really unpleasant person. So you have to choose.
Do you wish sometimes you were someone else?
I wish I was the person that I am at home. You know, I mean, that's the thing. What happens with public attention is that the public person, the way the world sees you and talks about you, is very different from the way you see yourself at home.
Would you say you change when you're in public?
I mean, you change somewhat, because it's a little bit of performance, you know.
Who did you always dream to become, Salman?
James Joyce.
A writer?
A writer, yeah. When I was a little boy growing up in Bombay, and my parents' friends would say, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, I would not say, like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a sporting star. I would say I want to be a writer.
But as a matter of fact, ever since the fatwa that was pronounced against you in 1989, you became maybe more than a writer, or at least something else. How difficult was it for you to cope with that?
I had to fight back, you know. I mean, my friend, the writer, Martin Amis, British writer, had this thing he said about me. He said that Salman vanished into the front page, out of the book section into the news section. And I spent a lot of my life trying to get back into the book section.
Did you suffer from it?
Yeah, because it's not my natural home, the news, the front page of the news, you know. And of course there was danger. There was quite a lot of danger for a long time.
I'm wondering how difficult it is for a novelist not to be read, but to be talked of all the time.
No, it's awful. It's awful. And for people to have opinions about your books without ever having opened them.
So what would the young Salman Rushdie, who dreamt of being a writer, would say, in your opinion, to today's Salman Rushdie?
Well, I would say, you know, what would that one say to this one? We would say, look out. It's harder than you think.
This attack, a year and a half ago, it costed you an eye, your right eye. How did you manage to write about that?
I think, in a way, the subject decided me because I couldn't write anything else. You know, I mean, I thought I would, initially I thought I don't want to write about it. You know, I want to get back to telling stories.
Fiction.
Fiction. And I had a little computer file with ideas for stories, and I looked at it, and I thought, these are just stupid, I can't do this. You know, there's this huge subject standing here, and I can't go and talk about these little subjects over here. And so I thought, well, I've got to deal with the big subject, you know, and here we are.
As a matter of fact, you had talked already about yourself in a book called Joseph Anton, an autobiography, but it was in the third person. This one is in the first person.
Yeah.
What does it change?
Well, when I wrote that earlier book, I wrote it quite a long time after the events that it described. And what I thought is that the person the me that I'm writing about, is not exactly the same as the me who's writing the book, because time has passed, you know. And this time, it's completely, there's no difference. I'm right up against the event. So this one has to be a first-person book.
But you remain a novelist of imagination, Salman.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that's all I ever wanted to do, was to make stuff up.
And I'm thinking, of course, of this crazy scene in your book, I have to say, which is this fictional encounter between you and your attacker. An encounter that never happened.
Never.
You imagine a dialogue. Why did you choose to imagine it?
I just thought I'm going to make him one of my characters. You know, I mean, he tried to kill me, which is a way of silencing me. And I thought what I'll do instead is I'll get myself into his head. And I'm the person, he's the puppet, and I'm the puppet master.
Is that some kind of revenge?
Kind of, yeah. But also I felt there's a sort of mystery in him. You know, because he's very young. He's 24 years old when he attacked me. So now he would be maybe 26. He had no previous criminal record. He was not on any terrorism watch list. He was just a kid growing up in New Jersey. To go from that to murder is a very big jump.
Yeah, it's actually one of the questions you ask at the beginning of the book. Try to understand what happened.
Yeah, why would he do that? You know, a perfectly peace-loving person to turn into a would-be murderer. What does that?
So what's your take?
Well, I mean, some of it is kind of obvious, which is Islamic radicalization, you know, because his parents had separated. He's of Lebanese origin. His parents had separated. His father had gone back to Lebanon. And when he was like 19, I think, 18, 19, something like that, he decided he'd go and visit his father in Lebanon. And his father lived in a village near the Israeli border, which is a very Hezbollah village. It has big billboards of Hezbollah heroes in the village. And his mother said that when he came back from 1 month, he was only there for 1 month, came back after 1 month, and she said he was completely changed. Until that point, he had not been very religious. He came back very Islamicized. And
you mentioned that he had never read a few pages of your books.
Never read anything. He didn't know anything about me, you know, except maybe what he was told by people in his father's village. I don't know.
Do you think he'll read this book?
No. No, I don't think. I somehow have the impression he's not a big reader.
You know what's very moving to me when reading Knife is that it's a book of love, as a matter of fact. To what extent did love save you, Salman? The love of your wife, of your sister, of your children, of your friends, but also the love of all the anonymous people who protested all over the world and sent you messages of support. I think it was very powerful. I think it was very strengthening, you know. When you're at your lowest point and your weakest point, and you know, you're this close to death, to have all that support coming towards you gives you strength. It gave me strength, for sure. I'm very grateful for it. Did you find the same support then 30 or so years ago?
No, much more divided back then. Well, but I didn't really get hurt then. You know, this time I really got hurt, so people are more sympathetic.
How do you explain that?
Just that, you know, if somebody's not hurt, you can have for and against points of view. If somebody gets badly hurt, there's a tendency for human beings to be sympathetic. It's interesting. It means for you that time didn't really change. It's just what happened that changed. Yeah, the thing changed. The event changed, you know. Because there were, back in then, right in 1989 when the trouble started, there were people who thought that it wasn't real, you know, who thought that I was just making a fuss. And there wasn't anybody really trying to harm me. So you can say to the camera, it's not a conspiracy theory here. No, this is not a conspiracy theory if they really tried to get you. Did you wish that there were more supports after this attack? No, this was, I mean, I was grateful for what there was. I mean, I was actually focusing much more on just getting better. I'm thinking of India, because you mentioned this. No, but India... Where you were born? India, where I was born, and which has always been, in a way, my greatest inspiration, you know. I mean, there wasn't anything from official India. That's okay. I mean, I don't need necessarily prime ministers. But there was a lot from just ordinary readers. And so in that sense, yes, there was. It's just, there were other world leaders like President Macron or President Biden or even Boris Johnson who said some nice things. But the Indian leadership did not. Are all your books published, Salman, in India? Yeah, except one.
Don't mention the title, I think we know. What role did your wife, the poet Eliza Griffiths, play in your recovery?
Well, she just took over, you know. I mean, I was at my weakest moment. I couldn't do anything. She just took over and did everything. And everybody had to answer to her. If the doctors wanted to do something, they had to explain it to her first. You know, if the FBI was doing something, the FBI had to explain to her what they were doing.
She was some kind of superwoman.
She was kind of went into superhero mode, yeah.
Yeah, and she told you off quite a...
Yes, well, she always tells me off.
What did she say to you?
I mean, shut up. No, there was a moment when I was much better, when we went back to, I wanted to go back and visit the place where it happened. So we went, you know, and that was powerful and good. But I also suddenly realized that the jail where the guy was being held was 5 minutes drive away. So I thought, let's go see the jail, because he's in there. I'd like to go have a look at it. So we just went to the car park. We didn't go in. We were standing in the car park looking at the wall of the jail and the barbed wire and the cell block. And I thought, he's in there, I'm out here, that feels good. And what happened is, completely involuntarily, my feet started dancing.
Come on.
Just started jigging about. I was pleased. And she was standing there with a camera trying to take a picture of me in front of the jail. And she said, look, will you stop jumping up and down, because I'm trying to take your picture. But I was happy that he was out in there and I was out here. And so I just danced a little in the car park.
You know, what amazes me is that you remain happy, you remain funny, you remain optimistic. That's a word that is omnipresent in your book, optimist.
Yeah, I think, you know, to be a writer, you have to be a little optimistic, because, you know, you sit in a room for several years sometimes, trying to make something happen on a page, and you hope
sound horrible or something.
And you hope that people will like it. You know, so in order to do that, you have to be a hopeful person.
After everything you've been through, what's your greatest pleasure today?
Going to Yankee Stadium, watching baseball.
What about writing?
Writing is just, you know, I'm always happiest when I have a book to write. You know, when the book starts coming and I'm sitting at my desk every day writing, that's happiness. When I don't have a book to write, like now, I don't have a book to write, I'm a little irritable.
I was wondering, for you, what's the price of freedom, Salman?
Well, I mean, the price of it is what you pay when you're not free, you know? I mean, I think having this injury, that's a high price to pay. But it's worth it, because freedom is worth having, you know? And if you go to places in the world where they don't have it, you know, if you go to China or parts of the Islamic world or parts of the Latin American world, you talk to young people, that's what they want. You know, that was, when the Arab Spring happened, that was young people wanting to be able to walk down the street holding hands. It was people wanting to have a regular job. It was women not having to be covered from head to foot. It was just, you know, it was very largely led by young people. And it was really just kids wanting to have the ordinary life that young people want to have.
But you do know the price of freedom, it's also having security with you all the time.
Yeah, but that's temporary. I mean, I was living in New York for 25 years without any of that, you know, and felt all right.
You hate it, security?
Well, I mean, I prefer not to have it, yeah.
The truth is, you travel a little bit like a head of a state all over the countries, and I'm wondering, Salman, what country do you actually govern? It can be an imaginary country.
Yes, I think a country of the imagination will do me fine. That's a big country.
How does it look like?
It changes all the time.
All the time?
Yeah, they repaint it every night.
But it's also imbued with traditions, with myths, with
Yes,
tales.
it has very old stuff in it, you know, because the imagination has always been something human beings have been doing since the beginning, you know, since cave paintings on the wall of Lascaux. You know, we've always been people who imagined and dreamed and made things up. And we like having stories. Human beings have always wanted to be told stories, you know. And so storytelling is as ancient as it gets. But also, of course, it's completely modern, because every age wants its own stories. You know, you don't necessarily only want the old stories, you want new stories.
Would you say that what makes us human?
Yeah, because, you know, we are the only creature on the earth that tells stories. You know? There's nothing else, no matter how intelligent the creatures may be, and there are very intelligent creatures on earth, whales, you know. But nothing else on earth tells stories. You know? We are the storytelling animal. You know, we tell each other stories to understand the kind of animal that we are. Nobody else does that.
What advice would you give to a young person facing the uncertainty of today's world?
Write a book.
Really?
Yeah, because a book is a way of thinking, of understanding what you think, you know. In order to write a book, you have to tell yourself what you actually think. And then you write it down.
But do you need any genius for that?
No. You just need determination. You know, I remember Philip Roth, the American writer, once said that writers are people who finish books. That's the secret of it, get to the end.
How many books didn't you finish?
Did I not finish?
Yeah.
Oh, in the beginning there were a few. There were 4 or 5.
You still have them?
They're in my literary archive is at Emory University in Atlanta. They have them.
Well, we are talking about America. How do you see the US at the moment?
Oh, it's in a mess.
Do you think Donald Trump will be elected?
We come back to optimism. My view is that he will lose the election. And for 2 reasons. One is that women won't vote for him because the abortion issue is colossal in America right now, ever since the cancellation of the Roe v. Wade judgment. And women, in every election that's happened at the state level, since then, women have swung to the Democratic Party by large numbers. So if that now happens in the presidential election, he can't win. And the other reason is he might be in jail.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Roe v. Wade because it takes us back to religion, and not only Islam.
No, this was driven by evangelical Christianity, no question.
What's the problem with religion?
That it exists. I mean, no, I've always thought that religion as a private practice, I have no problem with it. You know, if you need some kind of religious faith in order to give you comfort or to show you how to live, etc., that's your business, not my business. You know, if you weaponize that, politicize that, and start telling me how I should live, then it's my business.
Yes, and to be fair, the cultural dimension of religion, you totally assume, and you say in the book that you're very much imbued with Catholicism, with Islam, and with
many
Hinduism.
religions. You know, I mean, actually, you know, the great ancient European myths, the Greek myths, the Roman myths, the Norse myths, they were originally religions. You know, Greek myths that was the religion of Greece. I mean, now because we don't believe in those gods anymore, they've just become stories. But at the time, they were religions. They had priests, they had churches, you know, they had temples, many of which still stand and we think are beautiful, but we don't worship in them anymore. You know? So religion, of course, has been a way in which human beings have told each other beautiful things, you know. And I like the Old Testament. I like the Old Testament more than the New Testament.
It's quite violent, though.
Very, but that's all right. So is Quentin Tarantino.
Salman, your friends Martin Amis and Paul Auster, that we adored here in Europe, recently died.
Yes.
Despite being the most threatened writer of your generation, you survived them. How does it feel? Yeah,
I'm going to be the last man standing. I think. No, I mean, this is very sad because in very quick succession, a few months apart, they died. And both of them had been fighting cancer for the last few years. You know, fighting very well, actually. There were moments when there were reasons for optimism. You know, there were moments when we thought that they might beat it, you know, but they didn't. And it's big holes in the world, you know, when your friends die.
Yeah, how do you deal with that, with the death of a friend?
Well, you know, you lose something. You lose all the conversations you had. You lose all the things you did together. You lose their vision of you. You know, because your friends have a way of seeing you, and when they go away, that version of you disappears.
At least they're writers, so their works survive. And
they're writers, yes. And Martin wrote a novel called Inside Story, in which he warned us when he was writing it. He warned his friends. He said, "You're all in it." But when we read the book, and there are characters with our names in it, but everything that we say is completely made up.
It's very emotional for me because you talk of them as brothers.
Yes. It's the last thing, and I said goodbye to, I went to see Paul Auster 2 days before he died. I went to see him on a Sunday, he died on Tuesday. And the last thing when I was saying goodbye to him, he said, I think of you as my brother. And I said, I think of you the same way. And I said, I never had a brother. And he said, nor did I. And that was our goodbye.
My last questions, of all the things that you've lost, if you could bring back one thing or one person, what would it be?
I don't know, really. Maybe my mother, you know, because I was very close to her. I was less close to my father. My father had an alcohol problem, you know. So,
that you talk about in the book.
yeah, so it just became very difficult to know him, you know, because he retreated into drink. And my mother did the work of protect. I was the eldest of 4 children and 3 sisters. And she had the job, or she took on the job of protecting us from his drink.
What influence did she have in your writing?
Oh, everything, because my mother was the best kind of storyteller, which is that she was a gossip.
Really?
She knew where everybody's secrets were buried. and like any gossip, she couldn't keep the secret.
Give me one example of a crazy story she told you.
She would tell you what your uncle and aunt did when they weren't supposed to.
Really?
Yes, all the naughty stories.
So you knew everything?
I knew everything.
Did you put them in your books?
Yeah, and then at one point she said, I'm going to stop telling you things because you put them in your books and I get in trouble.
That's the nightmare of living of having a writer in your family.
Yes, I mean, the great Polish poet Czesław Miłosz once said that if a writer enters a family, the family is fucked.
Would you sign that?
Yeah.
What hopes do you have today? What do you hope for?
Oh, just time to write some more, you know. I mean, you asked about Mountain Amos. He has had a nice thing he used to say. He used to say, when you leave, what you want to do is to leave behind a shelf of books. You want to be able to say, like, from here to here, it's me, you know. And so now, I mean, there's already 22, so I've got my shelf. But I want a slightly bigger shelf.
How many more?
Well, not 22, but some.
Thank you so much, Salman.
Thank you.